who need the money now. You're not going to see these solutions with the Democrats and Republicans, though, that talk about change, but in reality are doing nothing but just campaigning and fundraising for the next election, because that's really what it's all about to the Democrats and Republicans, is fundraising and running for re-election.
Ms. Smith.
This is not a new problem. Our economic troubles in this country began decades ago. It began with the New Deal. It began when we put ourselves on a path to a welfare state and a warfare state. It began with the creation of the unconstitutional Federal Reserve. The problem is big government, the federal government letting itself into areas it has no business being in. I am for free trade, a free market in the United States of America. And I'm for an end to the bureaucratic waste of our hard-earned tax dollars by the federal government running around the world, seeing where it can militarily intervene, regime change. All of that's costly. And it's you, the American people, who suffer. You suffer, you die. You don't get pharmaceuticals you need because the FDA won't allow you to have them. And they are taking your money for it. Where's the money that the business owners are making? Business owners have it hard. They got regulations they have to abide by. It's hard to be a small businessman. It's hard to run a corporation, all because of the federal government regulations. I say get the federal government out of all the economic situations, abolish the Federal Reserve, that's what we need to do. Give the free market back to the people, and our economy is going to soar. And I would add, end immigration restrictions, and economists say that the world economy would double. Thank you.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I believe we are further along than a recession. I think we are headed straight for a depression. And until we recognize that, we aren't going to be looking for the right solution. And what is the right solution? Thankfully, we know what it is. Any country that has cut government spending, opened their trade barriers, dropped their trade barriers, and kept their inflation under control has been able to turn from a poor third world type country into an economic miracle. We know how it's done. First thing we need to do is slash government spending, and that should be very easy to do, because when we have government do something for us, it costs us twice as much. So every time we cut back on government, we're going to be benefiting twice as much. And of course, if you look at exactly what the mechanism of government spending is, it often is spent on regulation. Each regulator destroys about 150 jobs a year in the private sector. So we need to decrease regulators, just as happened in the Reagan years, and we'll see a lot of prosperity returning. And of course, the mortgage crisis is just a reflection of this, a reflection of the inflation and the reflection of the fact that the banks believe they can lend money to poor prospects and get bailed out. That is not the libertarian way. We believe in freedom and responsibility. Thank you.
And we've heard all of these nostrums for the last 50 years that I know of from libertarians and from other right-thinking Americans. There's no question the first thing we need to do is to wipe out the income tax and to put in the fair tax. We need to wipe out the Federal Reserve, which is a private corporation of bankers who run our economy. Sure, we need to do that. We need to wipe out the military-industrial complex. But who's going to do it? Clearly the Congress is not going to do it, and clearly we don't have the votes to get it done. And my answer to that problem is very simple. Empower the American people to be able to make laws, and they'll repeal all of these institutions that have been corrupting our economy. We have to empower, and that's what I bring to the Libertarian Party, a piece of legislation that will permit Americans to make laws in every jurisdiction of the United States. It's called the National Initiative. It's not that complicated. It's a piece of legislation that is only 5,600 words. We make laws in the United States in 24 states at the local and state level. Why is it so impossible to make it at the federal level? Do we lose our brain power when we move from the state to the federal citizenship? Of course not. And so that's what the watchword should be of libertarians, is let's become lawmakers. Let's take control of our government, and then we'll make all these changes. Talking about it and not being able to do it is really very unfortunate.
Americans listen to people talk about collateralized debt obligations and they say, oh good heavens, rocket science, we can't understand this. Look, I'm a physicist. My doctorate is from MIT. I teach rocket science. And then in the afternoon I teach the hard stuff. Yes, we do have some real problems. The problems are a liquidity crisis, banks don't have enough money, and a risk crisis, the banks don't know who they can lend money to safely. And what did the Democrats and Republicans do? They gave us this wonderful tax rebate. Hey, I don't mind getting $600 in my pocket, neither does anyone else. But they just made the whole problem a lot worse. That money came from someplace. It came from issuing more T-bills. And all those T-bills, that's money sucked out of the economy, sucked away from the banks, destabilizing the banking system. Worse, all those T-bills, they got sold to China, India, all those places. That means China and India sell us their goods, and they don't have to buy goods back. Instead, they can buy T-bills. If we didn't have this huge budget deficit, we would have a trade balance because there would be no alternative path. We can do things. Cut regulations on small business. Do all of the things the libertarians will tell you about to free up the economy. Welcome H-1B visa people, the best and the brightest from around the world to build our economy. Hey, I can go on, but I see I'm running out of time. We can build a prosperous America if you elect us.
Thank you, Dr. Phillies. And just to let everybody know, I'm repeating the candidates' names not for your benefit. I know who you know who they are, but the folks listening on the radio need to know who is about to speak. That's why I say their name before, and so thought I'd clarify that. The next question begins with Mr. Jingozian. Considering the rising cost of oil and its impact on the price of gasoline, and as a result on the budgets of Americans, and the recent weakening of the dollar's buying power, what should America's long-term economic priorities be, and how would you enact solutions to the current economic troubles?
Good question. Because really, we can do more about our long-term problems than we can about our short-term problems. The price of oil, the price of gasoline, as we all know from Ron Paul, has not gone up in relation to gold, and has not gone up in proportion to the decrease of the value of the dollar. The problem is the value of the dollar. The value of the dollar is collapsing because of the national debt, because we're bankrupting our nation. Now, I understand if I was elected president that I couldn't get rid of the Department of Energy, that I couldn't just get rid of the Department of Education, or I couldn't just get rid of the Department of Homeland Security, which I would like to do. But we need to start addressing our fiscal issues in this country. That's what's going to get us back on track. Now, 2/3 of our budget is entitlement spending. So when John McCain gets up and says that he's going to balance the budget by cutting out pork, he's either ignorant or he's lying. Because you can eliminate the entire discretionary budget and still not balance the budget. We have to look at entitlement spending. It's just not fair that one generation collects $4 to $6 per dollar they put into the system, whereas young people today will collect about 20 cents for every dollar they put into the system. We need to look at entitlements. We need to slash government spending. We need to get this country and this economy back on track, and that is what's going to make America, America again. Thank you.
As I said earlier, the problem began many years ago. I received several letters over the last few months from truck drivers complaining about the gas prices and how it's hurting them. And non-libertarian truck drivers, but people intrigued by the campaign. And as I've shared with them, it's not corporate greed that's making the prices go up. Just like when you go to see your doctor or your hospital, it's not the hospital that's trying to rip you out of all the money that you work for. It's solely, once again, because of the federal government. Federal government intervening with price controls, which never work. The opposite of